Let us receive Elder Hines at this time.
Honor to God through his son Jesus, who died for us on Calvary, to Bishop Patterson and his absence, to Bishop Ford, to the General Board, to Bishop Moody, the President of the Missions Department, and to you that have gathered to make up this congregation. Truly we honor God for this opportunity to stand before you and to share with you the grace of God that has been bestowed in our lives. I know so many times when we come to Memphis, Tennessee, we see people go forth in the Lord, and we say, Lord, if there's an opportunity to share something, we would thank you for that opportunity. I thank Bishop Moody for this opportunity to stand here. 3 years ago, Bishop Ford also allowed me the opportunity to stand before you and to share with you my testimony. On July 17, 1981, I was working for Republic Airlines in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That evening, it was a lightning storm going on, and because we don't have a lot of time, we're going to get right into the testimony. The lightning was flashing so, and it was such a terrible storm until the planes were no longer taking off. I was an employee for Republic Airlines. So when the lightning began to strike, it was my job to park the aircraft and to signal the pilot as to where to park the plane. When I went to the plane to let the front stairwell down, lightning struck my body. Now when the lightning struck my body, it knocked me between 5 and 15 feet straight up in the air. When I came down to the earth, my heart wasn't beating, my pulse wasn't beating, the blood wasn't flowing through my body. They immediately began to rip and tear my clothes off of my body and work CPR. They worked CPR for a period of time. After about 23 minutes, the paramedics arrived. They took out their electrical defibrillators and began to shoot the electrical currents through my body with no effect. And about that time, someone called my mother and told her to pray for me. This young man was a dear friend of mine, and he addressed my mother just like she was his mother. He said, "Mama, something serious has happened. Pray for Daryl." So my mother immediately began to pray from my mind, even though the young man didn't tell her I was struck by lightning. After about that time, the paramedics put their equipment away because they figured that there was no hope, that if life were to enter back into my body, that I had been gone too long without oxygen to my brain, which was about 45 minutes, and I would be a complete vegetable. But my mother prayed. She called the saints at church, and they began to pray. And a lady by the name of Teddy got into the back of the paramedic wagon, and she too began to pray for me. And as she prayed, she said, "God, I know that you're not finished with this young man. I want you to, God, I want you to touch his body and give him his life back." And about that time, she said, God moved in the back of that paramedic wagon. A soothing heat came there, and they knew it was the presence of God. By that time, I began to breathe as life came into my body. God worked a miracle. They rushed me to the hospital, and the doctors tied my body down. They held me down. Every 6 seconds, I would sit up in the bed and scream like an elephant. And it was even so effective and such a loud, hideous noise until when my mother got to the hospital, she could not familiarize or identify with that sound. She said it sounds something like an elephant's roar. They led her down the corridor, and she saw her son laying on the stretcher with leather belts holding his body down, every 6 seconds sitting up in the bed screaming, my tongue extending past the bottom of my chin. The moisture burned out of my mouth, my eyes whirling in my head. The doctor said I wouldn't live 2 hours. But on the way to the hospital, God told my mother in the car, when you get to the hospital, look past what the doctor said, and I'll show you a miracle. Praise you, Jesus. So when she got to the hospital, and the doctors pulled her off to the side and said, Miss Hines, you see the state that your son is in. If he lives 2 hours, he'll never get out of that state. But we expect for him to be dead within 2 hours. She looked at those doctors and said, no, watch my God work. God is going to bring him out of that tonight. And she began to pray. She said, God, I am not going to put a thing in my mouth. And I'm not going to get up off of my knees until you heal my son. And after about 2 hours, God moved into the hospital. And as God moved in the hospital, he began to bless my soul. As I cried out, I cried, Lord, bless my soul. I cried, save me, Jesus. And since that day, I've been running for the Lord. You see, I have been fortunate and benefited to share with the missions department. And I've learned one thing since God has given me my life back, is that we need to know how to give our services to God. You see, I realize now that it is not God that needs me, but I need God. You see, God is self-existent. God is self-sufficient. He's omnipresent and he's omniscient. God can exist in an atmosphere, or he can exist outside of an atmosphere. God doesn't need any human elements to exist. He don't need the air that we breathe. He doesn't need the water that we drink. God doesn't need the food that we eat. For I heard God say, if I was hungry, I wouldn't even tell you. So I realize now that I need God, and God don't need me. You see, when God made man, I heard him say that they are the sheep of my pasture. Now, when you look at that thing, it seems that God made us after one of the most insufficient animals ever created. You see, a sheep does not have the sense of a pack wolf. He will stray away from the fold. A sheep does not have the sense of a skunk. He doesn't even know to use stink to escape his enemy. A sheep does not have the ability of a possum. He doesn't even know how to play dead. He doesn't have the agility of a monkey. He don't know how to climb a tree. He doesn't have the swiftness of a cheetah. He cannot outrun his enemy. But I thank God for calling me a sheep, because a sheep has something that the monkey don't have. A sheep has something that the lion don't have. A sheep has something that the bear don't have. But I heard David said, the Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. And I'm so glad that God is my shepherd. I'm so glad that God takes care of me. When I'm tired, he jubilates. When I'm weak, he innovates. When I'm lonely, he fascinates. When I'm hungry, he cultivates. When I'm thirsty, he allocates. When I'm disturbed, he concentrates. When the devil comes, he investigates, and he makes the devil vacate. God is my delegate. He's everything. Can I get a witness? He's everything that I need. I'm so glad he picked me up. I'm so glad he gave me my life back, and I'm running